You're welcome back. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. So now to our hot topic. Custom raises exchange rate for importers as Tinubu woos Saudi Arabia investors. I have a guest with me, Frank Ilanya, who is the editor of Technology and Entertainment of Business Day. Good morning, Frank. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure being here.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. The custom tariff has been increased now. My first question would be, what is going to be the impact on the prices of goods? Because as we know, the importers will definitely want to peg their goods and services to the new price right now.
Yeah, so what this is going to lead to is higher inflation in the market. We already have about 26% inflation rate. I think definitely what we're going to see is an uptick in that number. It doesn't maybe bode well for the economy. Don't forget that a few months ago, this government lifted the ban on the 43 items that were banned in 2015 by the Buhari administration. And what you would have expected is that once that ban was lifted, manufacturers will want to go to the market, to the global market, to import some of these items that we don't have in sufficient quantity into the country. And of course, what that will mean is that they will need effects to accomplish that. But with the recent increase in tariff as a result of the FX crisis that we are having, what you're going to find is that there's either going to be a reduction in the amount or in the number of goods that are going to come into the country. And aside from that, you're also going to find that the ones that are being brought into the country will then be sold at a higher price. In a normal situation, that would have been an opportunity for the local producers to leverage and also compete in the market, because what that would mean is that the prices that they're going to sell would then be competing with the imported goods. But it is not the case here, because the local manufacturers themselves are also being pressured by the FX crisis that we're having. Don't forget also that they too need to import technology that they use to produce these goods that they have. They also need to import, some of them need to import the raw materials that they use in producing the goods that they manufacture. So the pricing is still not going to align as it should. It will make things difficult for the end user. That's the consumer, you and I, who are going to buy this finished product. So it is not the best of times, for the consumer or for the Nigerian consumer. It has been back-to-back pressures since the floating of the naira, since the removal of a subsidy to date. And it doesn't appear to me like the government has the solution yet to make these things go away. Yes, we hear that the government or the president is talking to Saudi Arabia, but I'm particularly not very hopeful about that discussion, given the fact that I think it was just yesterday that the same Saudi Arabia deported, I think that's what we should use, deported over 200 Nigerians who were coming into the country for visa on arrival. They denied them visa on arrival, and the airline that was carrying them was asked to turn back and take them back to Nigeria. So if we're already having that fractured, if they don't even respect us, and the fact that our president was in their country discussing with their leaders, they didn't even think about that, and they had to take that decision. And tell them to go back. I'm not very hopeful. Whatever the discussion they're going to have with President Tinubu, maybe we might be surprised. Maybe something might come out of it. But we've also heard the government say that they're going to bring in $10 billion very soon into the FX market. But very soon, we don't know how soon is soon. Until we see something tangible, we can't rely on promises. And what the FX market need right now is actions. It needs to move right now. It needs solutions now, not solutions in the future, because everyone is feeling it. It is not a funny sight to see what's happening to a lot of businesses that are shutting down. It's not a funny sight to see what's happening to a lot of businesses that can't carry on because things are very difficult for them, and also not a very funny thing to see that families can afford to feed properly because prices of goods and services in the market are very, very high. So we need an urgent solution. Discussions are good, but any discussion that doesn't bring an immediate solution, I don't think it's of any benefit to you and I right now.
Okay, so if we're trying to woo investors, should we be increasing the tariff, given that this is the second one in 5 months, the second increase? So should we even be increasing the tariff if we're trying to woo investors, telling people they should come into Nigeria and invest? And given the fact that they have to import a lot of these things, as you've pointed out, how do we get these people to come in?
So it's a funny situation, actually, knowing that it is something that we can actually avoid. I mean, we're talking about customs revenue here. So it's not like something that is a cast in stone that if we don't do it, we're going to die. It is. You would have expected that at this point that the government is thinking about how do we remove some of these blockades that are hindering investment into the country. Because if you're asking investors to come into the country, they are definitely going to have to import a lot of things that they need to set up their businesses here in the country, because you don't have those things present in the country. There's a lot of things that are not available here in the manufacturing processes that are required from outside, which is also why the manufacturing sector demand as much as 70% of FX to fund the importation of the technology into the country, and also many raw materials have to come from outside. Things like tomato paste are still coming from outside. A lot of things are still coming from outside. So if you're going out there to tell investors, come into our country, and then you turn back and make the process of them setting up their business very tedious, they won't take you serious. Remove the fact that they already don't take us serious with the way we spend. We have a very terrible spending culture. And here I'm talking about the government. They are very wasteful. So already there's an impression that the monies that we're bringing into your country, you're not judiciously deploying those funds. Now you're asking us to come in, even though we're not going to give you the money in your hand, we're coming in with the money. But how do we then set up a business in a very toxic environment, in a very difficult environment? The ease of doing business in Nigeria is very, very low, which is why local businesses themselves are shutting down. Yeah. So would a foreign investor want to come into the country knowing fully well that just days ago you have just increased tariff as a result of the FX? Some say, but you don't blame customs, but customs belong to the government. And whatever target the government has given them, you must generate before the end of the year, because this is your target in the budget. The government can actually look beyond that and look at the greater picture to say, even if we go a little broke for this period, it will attract us investment, which in the long run will then fund the revenue, will then fund some of the projects that we want to fund. Because if you attract investors into the country, they come into your country, they see that there's an ease of doing business that enables them to thrive. You don't even need to build the roads as yourself. You find that investors will turn around to say, can we help? Where do we help you build these roads? Where do we help you build this railway? Government is looking for money to build many railway projects, build other things, but you don't sound serious when you release a supplementary budget of over 2 trillion naira, and the items on that budget are things like yachts, things like first lady SUVs, things like furnishing your office, which you and I know that this president is like the richest president that Nigeria has ever had. So there's nothing really that he wants that he cannot afford. He's got everything that he requires. He's got everything that he requires, that he needs, So he necessarily didn't have to make all these budgets to maybe furnish his office, furnish the office of his vice president, who is also very rich, by the way. So there's a lot of things to balance that are not balancing. And when you go out there, you tell investors, come to our country. We have this. We have the mining sector that is just about to start booming. We have the energy sector that is represent an opportunity for you and all that. But your actions don't convey that you are serious about making the environment less difficult. Then they're not going to take you serious, and they're not going to come. And sometimes I've often said that you don't necessarily need to go outside the country to be shouting at investors to come to your country. If you do the right things here, without even going outside, you find that investors will come of their own accord. I don't see Dubai or UAE officials go touring the whole world looking for officials or looking for investors. Investors just pour into UAE, whether it's Dubai, whether it's Abu Dhabi, and other cities that they have. Why? Because they can see without being told that things are happening. There's an infrastructure plan that is long-term focused. There is a health care plan that is long-term focused. Don't forget that what's it called? Our budget, the health care plan in our budget is still below 5%. We're supposed to get up to 15%, but we have not even funded our healthcare up to 15%. In the supplementary budget, nothing is said about healthcare, but we have the time in the world to go and be funding yachts and be funding things that are not going to benefit us any way at all. So you can't convince investors. Are not blind people. They're not foolish people who just want to throw away money and be dashing you because your name is Nigeria, or maybe you come from a poor country or poor continent and all that. They're not philanthropists. They're people who want return on investment, and it has to be good return on investment for them.
Okay, well, some people will argue that doing this is just to encourage people from exporting so that the local industries can be encouraged to produce more. There was this mantra by, I think, the Labour Party, we should move from consumption to production. Maybe this is what they are trying to do by discouraging exportation into Nigeria. Do you agree?
The only way to discourage importation into the country is to encourage the local manufacturing industry that you have. How do you encourage them? It's not by banning or by putting restrictions on importation. It is by creating the enabling environment for their businesses to thrive. Start with the basics. Number one, have you put in the infrastructure? What is the power provisions that you have made? 50% of the problems that manufacturers face is because they don't have electricity. They practically run on generators throughout. their manufacturing process, because for some of them, they can't afford for lights to go off. If you run a data center, for instance, it's 24/7. You and I know that. It's 24/7, but that cannot come from solely from the grid. So these guys end up providing their power themselves. The same with several other manufacturers out there that we have. So 50% of that problem is power. You haven't solved it. So you can't be grandstanding to say, oh, you're trying to discourage importation and all. You're just grandstanding. It doesn't make any sense at all. You have the next one is infrastructure, logistics. The road networks are very poor. They're in a very poor state, all right? Although we have a lot of talks here and there that they are working on this road. How long have they been working on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is what you need to ask. How come at this time and age, 2023, we don't have a multimodal transportation system where the roads are connected to the railways, they are connected to the airport, they are connected to the sea, so it's seamless enough that if you want to carry your goods from the hinterland, you can take it through the railway, and you take it, and before you know it, you're exporting it outside the country. That's another aspect. The other one is security. Till date, there's nothing the government can convince you and I will know that insecurity is high in the country. They can decide, but they can tell us, but in the past few days, we have not heard so much about the bombing and other, but it is happening. As we should also add that to the aviation issues that we are currently facing. In the past, say 4 to 5 months now, we've been having a lot of airplanes that are either missed their runway, or they crash landed, or they did this one, they did that one, and all that. What are the factors responsible for that? The factors include the poor infrastructure on all at our airports. We built a new airport in Lagos, and we later have to find out that the airport was not big enough to accommodate everyone. Why did we even start it? So when you build projects with such selfishness, or whatever it is that made that particular airport to be built that way, you're not going to make any headway. So there are several issues that you need to address before you even start considering. When you have addressed all of these things, you can then start considering, okay, can we now start putting tariffs that can discuss? Because by then, what then happens is that your manufacturers are now assessing all of these production factors that you're putting in place. They are assessing the energy, they are assessing the road, they are assessing, they are able to go to their offices without being afraid that somebody's going to kidnap them, and they know that the police are working. They know a lot of things are working. And don't also forget that we've been crying that customs should be reformed. We are giving customs increase in tariff without reforming the customs. Are we sure can we account that the revenue that we get from customs is exactly the amount that go in there? Those are where the issues are. Until you address those issues, you can't convince anyone that tariff is the only way to encourage your local manufacturers to export. They can't export when they cannot produce. They need to first of all produce. So what they even have is not even enough for the local market. The fact that the things that they produce are considered low quality, low standard, because we know how many of our goods have been rejected in Europe. Especially if you're a farmer, you know how many farm produce that don't go to Europe because they are considered low quality. Why are they still considered low quality in 2023 when we know how we can upgrade their quality? So until we have done all of that, you can't blame those who are importing goods into the country and say that's why people are not producing, because the prices of imported goods are competing with those of the local and all that. Why are things produced locally more expensive? That's what you should be addressing. It's not importation that made it that way. Whether you like it or not, we cannot achieve sustainability in every product that we need or that our families need. You can't achieve sustainability in rice production. There are some countries that their environment enables them to produce rice in larger quantity than Nigeria does. In fact, I've heard people even say that Nigeria should not even be producing rice because the environment, the land that we have, this kind of environment, and the topography does not allow us to produce in that that kind of quality that we want. So those are things that you can look at and say, okay, where is our strength? Can we focus on that? Can we look at some products that we can do better in, and then we enhance them, fund them, provide what the enabling environment for them to thrive? That's where to start, not from putting restrictions.
Okay, well, this government has also said, even though we are saying that the things are not put in place, they have said that all bottlenecks will be all over. Not will be. I think this president likes to use the word gone. All bottlenecks are gone for the people who will come and invest and all that. But my concern now is, now that we're talking about local industries, I'm concerned about whether you can rate this government as being a government that has put certain things, not everything, certain things in place to make sure that local industries thrive. Maybe you have seen one policy or the other that they have put in place to make local industries to thrive. Maybe you can share with us. But otherwise, how would you just rate the level of preparedness for our being independent? By saying that, I mean that we are not dependent on any other country to import a lot of things before we can consume in this place. So if we want to be a country that exports, do you see anything that has been done in the past, let's say 6 months or 5 months, that shows that our local industries may grow in the next 1 or 2 years?
I think largely this government has been more rhetorics than action. When they try to act, they act as if they hadn't thought these things through. It's as if that's what we need to do right now. Let's just do it. Or that's what people are saying. Let's just go and do it and see trial and error. So there's a lot of trial and error that is going on. It was trial and error that led to the removal of petrol subsidy, because during the campaign period, it was one of the things that all the candidates were talking about. You need to remove it because blah, blah, blah. And then there was also talk around the floating of the naira. But I can bet that this president didn't actually understand what floating the naira is, or maybe entails. So, but he just felt like it was the thing to do. So let's just do it and see what is going to happen. Or perhaps also he was trying to remove the legacies of the past CBN governor, who is currently facing trial, But as time has proven, we haven't, that wasn't the right steps to for him to have made. When you want to do things, you first of all have to sit down and ask yourself, what are the implications? How should I go about it? You don't just open your mouth and start running it, because you think, because people have said it, you should just go ahead and do it. There has to be a human thought to it. You need to ask yourself, how would this affect mine, as in the larger community? The businessmen and women who are rich in this country can tell you that's the right thing to do, because whether you remove fuel or not, and they buy it at 1,000 naira or maybe at 600 or 700, it doesn't affect them that much because they pay all the money to do that. But the average Nigerian on the street would not agree with you, and the average Nigerian are much more in number than the 1% that are considered the richest in this country. That's if they're still up to 1% right now, considering what has happened to income. So that's who you should be looking at. The average Nigerian on the street. How does it affect him? And then you start thinking about, can we do things in phases? We remove it. We remove this particular percentage, and then we see how it goes. So by the time you're done, before 4 years, you probably would have removed it. And some of us have also argued that it is not just about, as in subsidy in itself is not a very bad thing. It is the administration of the subsidy that is the bad thing. Mm-hmm. We had a post-structural system where the institutions were not respected, also because of the fact that those who run the institutions were corrupt themselves, so it was easy for those outside to corrupt those running the institution. What should you have done at that point is try to clean up the institution, is try to put in structures that makes it impossible for anyone to steal. So once you have achieved that, then you start asking yourself, how then do we cut costs of governance? All right? And you can then set the example yourself. I said here that this president is the richest president Nigeria has ever had. Okay? He could have set an example to say, look, I'm not going to collect salary throughout my period as president. It could be a personal sacrifice that he's making. He's not going to beg for food, whether he gets a salary, how much is the salary that he will need throughout the period and all that. If we are to calculate it by the right standards, by the time he leaves office, maybe in 4 years, it's probably about 50 million that he's going to earn. 50 million isn't what he's looking for, and he could have set that standard. If he sets that standard, then he looks at ministers that he has and he says, okay, how do I make them accountable? You make them accountable, first of all, by giving them the right portfolio and ensuring that you're not just appointing ministers frivolously. What we have seen with these cabinets is that they were appointed frivolously, 47 or more than that. And they were talking about 8 that are as in uncountable. That, as in every other day you heard this one has been appointed. What is the portfolio? You don't even know what the person is coming to do, but appointed. Sometimes 20, sometimes 8 everywhere, littered everywhere. On social media, there's several communication people who are claiming to be aides of the president. So a lot of people just squeezing into the treasury, whereas you're supposed to be reducing what the waste that we're facing, then you can then look at, okay, so how do I address security? How do I ensure that those who have been given the responsibility of securing this country are doing what they're supposed to be doing? You start with police reform. You start with reforms in army. Start reforms in everywhere. Even the judiciary needs reform. For many years now, Supreme Court's judges, their salaries have not been reviewed. And right now, they're no longer talking about it either because they found a way to make up for whatever it is that they're not getting, But if you want them to be autonomous, if you want them to be truly dispensing justice, which businesses need? Businesses want an environment where they can say, I go to court, there's a breach of contract, they say, okay, I go to court, and I know for sure that in 1 month's time, this case will be decided, okay? So forget about the fact that as one person will now say, okay, I want to appeal it, but you have a process in place that is predictable, and you know that justice will be dispensed that nobody will argue with. You need to make the judiciary very autonomous, and it starts from what are they earning. Okay. So once you address all of those, there are several things for you to address. Okay. So far we have not seen that. So it's been a lot of talk, but
Okay, Frank, that will be where we will draw the curtain. But We've heard your points, and very valid points. Nigeria needs to sit up and do what they need to do. It's not just to clamp down on people who are trying to import goods into the country. I wish that they will hear, because it's not just hearing, but they will act on it, because we can't say that Nigerian leaders don't know what should be done. But we still keep asking ourselves, is there a bug on the seats that bites them as soon as they get there? Well, that's a question for another day. Frank Elanya, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. We've been talking with Frank Elanya on the show. Frank Elanya is the editor, technology and entertainment of Business Day newspaper. We were so happy to have him on the show. Okay, so you don't want people to import, or in fact, or you just raise the tariffs. It's funny to me.
Make it so expensive.
You make it so expensive, and then you're going to people to say they should come and invest in a country that their investment cannot be
they would not
furnished.
the
because
return on investment.
You can't even buy the raw materials to come and do whatever you're going to do in this country, because so many raw materials will be coming from outside. The ones that are here, we don't know where they go to and all that. And then you're asking them to come. Will you come? If you were the one, would you come? Knowing the security situation, the situation with the judiciary, knowing everything that it is about Nigeria.
Even power as well.
Power, yes. I was telling someone that when I went to Ghana and stayed for like 2 weeks, the airtime I buy in Nigeria and spend for 1 day or 2 days is what I use throughout the 2 weeks.
Your entire stay.
Yeah, because the power is steady.
Yes.
And you wouldn't blame the network providers, because they have steady power.
Yes.
So they give you this thing. It reflects in everything that you use in that country. And then I was sleeping and leaving my television on and expecting NEPA to go off.
They don't have
Thankfully, they don't have NEPA. Okay, well, this is where we are going to draw the curtain.
Yes.
I think we're done for the day.
Done.
Tomorrow will be a very good day to, you know, middle of the week. We're hoping that it's going to be good as well. Like we said, we hope that the relevant authorities have gone to Otedola Bridge to move the vehicles. I think there were 2 vehicles even. I don't know whether they collided or something, but from where I sat, I saw the vehicle should not be one. Maybe it is one, a very really long vehicle, but whatever it is, whether 1 or 2, it was creating something that we wouldn't like if the relevant authorities do not move these vehicles. And we do hope that no life was lost. But whatever it is, we're going to hear how that story ended, because we're going to find out what really happened and how it happened and whoever is involved. But this is how we are going to wrap up this morning. We're glad that you were there. My name is Nyamgul Agaji. Let's do it again tomorrow.
My name is Rume Paulson. We'll see you again.